White House stonewalling congressional investigators today and laying out opposition to really basic requests for evidence and documents. This is a sweeping new letter that I'm going to show you from the White House. It shows Donald Trump is defying the House Judiciary Committee's basic oversight requests and claiming that Congress should not investigate. Kind of an attempt to rewrite the Constitution. Now, the man who replaced Bob Mueller's star witness, Don McGahn, is basically firing off this letter, here it is, to Chairman Jerry Nadler, telling him how to do his job and claiming the appropriate course here would be for members of Congress to discontinue the entire inquiry. And there's also a bit of a Trumpian tone here, as the letter says that these probes, which of course have only began under Democrats in the past few months, already, in the view of the Trump White House, exceed Congress's authority, and they amount to harassing opponents and pursuing a do-over of the Mueller probe. The White House is also referencing a potential executive privilege claim without actually stating whether they're going to do it. Chairman Nadler fired back today.
The White House is making the outrageous claim that that a president cannot be held accountable in any way to the American people. We will subpoena whoever we have to subpoena. We will hear from Mueller. We will hear from McGahn. We will hear from a lot of other witnesses.
Some of this may sound familiar, some of it may be exhausting, but that's kind of what the Trump White House is betting on, that people will get exhausted and move on. The battle line here is quite important. It's whether, in the United States, lawfully executed subpoenas from the U.S. House of Representatives are going to mean something or not. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary is hinting today that he may defy, relatedly, a different subpoena, this one over the president's infamously hidden tax returns.
How do you plan to respond to Chairman Neal's subpoenas?
Well, we haven't had an official response yet. I think we have a few more days. We will comply with the timing of it, and I think you can pretty much guess how we're going to, but I haven't made a decision.
The key here is to separate the bluster from the action, because the congressional pressure in other ways is already working despite the bluster that you also hear from this White House. Consider that the president's own family member, Donald Trump Jr., has now backed down from his attempt at a subpoena war. He's agreed this week to testify. And the Democratic senator who was part of that winning battle saying today there are no compromises in the testimonial plan for that interview.
Are you happy with the scope of the agreement?
Listen, we've made no compromises with any of our witnesses. Anyone that was reporting otherwise isn't telling the truth.
Is there anything that's off limit during this interview?
We have made, with all witnesses, we have not set parameters.
I am joined on all of this by former U.S. Senator Robert Torricelli. Our New Jersey Senator quotient is high tonight with you.
I hear that.
And Cory Booker later, and Mara Gay, a New York Times editorial board member. Mara, what strikes you as important, distinguishing between all of the noise and the fact that some of these investigations are proceeding and they are apparently working at least getting witnesses in?
Well, I think that what you're seeing is that the Democrats have actually been disciplined for once. They had a strategy, which is to go full court press on these subpoenas, to not let up. And, you know, it's actually working. So I think if I were Nancy Pelosi, I'd be feeling pretty good about myself today.
And yet, Senator, you are here because of your distinguished experience. Most people haven't been in the rooms you've been in as a U.S. Senator. But I'm also going to hold it against you a little bit because, as you may know, there are a lot of people, particularly in your party, who are frustrated with the way that the party elites and senators and ex-senators are acting. And I'm going to give you an example for your pushback or your analysis, sir. Chairman Nadler said last week it's a constitutional crisis. And the Speaker echoed that. And then today he says, but let me take off the table, it's very unlikely that we would even consider moving towards impeachment. Take a look.
It depends what comes out. Yeah. It depends what we learn. It depends where the American people are as to whether we want to go that way or not. I don't want to make it sound as if we're heading for impeachment.
Yeah.
Probably we're not.
You really believe that? Probably we're not?
Probably, but I don't know.
Is that the right substantive answer now?
I'm going to frustrate you because the lawyer in me and the politician in me have kind of two different answers here.
Sounds like you're frustrating yourself.
I am. You know, there's a reason why this government has lasted 240 years, unlike every other nation on earth, and it is the founding principles of this Constitution. You simply cannot maintain democratic government in the United States if the Congress of the United States cannot exercise oversight and bring a cabinet official to answer before the Congress. This government will not endure. So the issue of bringing the Attorney General forward is to me, uncompromising. The politician in me says, I understand everything the Congress is doing. I could not be more sympathetic, but it's the remedy. The remedy for all this is the party must win in 2020. So if I were Nancy Pelosi, I would bring these chairs together and say, here's what we will pursue publicly, because we have a responsibility to the country and the Constitution. Here's what we will not. Here's what we will do silently through the courts. We want the American people to get a message. We're defending the Constitution, but also that their needs are our priority.
Well, so let's lay it out. They called you the torch. So this is the torch test for you and then Mara. If you let stand multiple obstruction crimes in office, for those who believe that there is substantial evidence of that, Mueller among them, what precedent does that set? In other words, wouldn't it be better if the Democrats' view was they didn't meet the bar on impeachable offenses, then say that, deal with the heat, and move forward? But what I'm hearing from more them than you, but I think a little bit from you, if I'm not mistaken, is, well, we need to win in 2020, so we're going to put aside the substantive constitutional question of whether this type of conduct will stand.
Well, but there's a conduct I'm suggesting you cannot stand. I mean, even if it jeopardizes the 2020 election, you can't change the fundamentals of American government, that the Congress does not do oversight of the executive, or we will lose control of executive power and no longer have a democratic government. That is uncompromising, even if it means 2020. What I disagree on is, I think the obstruction issue was lost in the Mueller report. He did not make a case for it. Suggesting it, hinting at it, saying there might be evidence of it, did not, in my opinion, fulfill his responsibilities.
You would have wanted him to say, well, we can't formally indict the president. He did things that are indictable, period.
Either he did or he did not. This idea, well, I can't tell you because you can't indict a president. No one said you have to conclude whether we're going to indict a president. You were asked to conclude, to do an investigation. The proper answer was there is evidence or there is not. In my opinion as a lawyer, I don't think there is. But in any case, we can't spend the next 2 years litigating it. We got to get on and win an election.
And you could respond to the lawyer Torricelli or the politician Torricelli, really whatever you choose.
Well, I would just say that, members of Congress don't need Bob Mueller to tell them whether the offenses laid out or the behavior laid out in that report are impeachable. Is impeachable, and that's because it's actually up to Congress to it's a political question. It's not a legal question.
I agree with that.
Right. And so certain behavior is just not acceptable for an American president, and that's for Congress and the American people to decide.
So how much more do you think this comes down to the actual leadership style and guts of these political figures, and not what we just maybe get lost in is all the other stuff? Because the Republicans, what everyone thinks of the Ken Starr history, the Republicans clearly knew when the report came out what they wanted to do, and to your point, they exercised their judgment because they released it and moved towards what they wanted to do immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the central question, and I haven't seen all of the polling, I'm sure that folks like Nancy Pelosi have, but the central question politically is, can the Democrats win if they move forward with impeachment? Can they win in 2020? And it seems to be the prevailing view among senior Democrats that they cannot. And I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case, especially because the American public is so deeply polarized. There are so few voters in between who the Democrats are going to be fighting for. But I don't know. And I'm not sure that that's, that presents in other words, just because you're going to lose an election doesn't mean that you don't have a job to do right now. And that the Democrats are in a tough spot. I completely agree with you. But they have to fulfill their duty to the American people. And a majority of Americans are not with this president. So it does kind of beg the question, what are they holding out for?
Well, in my experience, other than people like us, you get about 5 minutes of the American people's attention every day. With us, it's about 24 hours. Most Americans should get about 5 minutes. What I don't want is a year from now that after watching for 5 minutes a day, the American people are convinced that Donald Trump's for border security, he's for confronting Chinese trade practices, he's for dealing with Iran, he's for dealing with a strong economy, and Democrats are for impeachment and subpoenas. I wouldn't compromise for a minute, as I made clear, on constitutional responsibilities. But unless Nancy gets some discipline among those chairs, we run that risk. And the remedy, winning an election, is lost.
I think there's a way to walk and chew gum at the same time.
There can be.
But that's a very hard line to walk.
Well, it's interesting to hear you criticizing Mueller. Are you going to make a 2020 endorsement? Are you endorsing your home state senator?
If I had vote today, I would, of course, vote for Corey. But I like a lot of them. We are blessed with a strong field.
Who else do you like? Corey, you have a home field bond with.
You know what really makes me feel good about the race is that one candidate who's done the most homework, done the most work, picked the most detailed positions, Elizabeth Warren, has been rising. I love to see voters reward someone who's doing it right.
You think your political view is you think she's rising partly on the agenda because she every week is showing the voters exactly what she's running.
Because she's been serious about it.
Interesting. I won't ask you for an endorsement as a reporter. Former Senator Torricelli, MR Gay. Thanks to both of you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.